What if I told you that you've been manipulated today, and you didn't even realize it? That's the unsettling truth behind dark psychology. It doesn't knock on your door. It doesn't announce itself. It slips into your conversations, your relationships, your workplace, quietly influencing your reactions. Dark psychology works because it hides behind normal human behavior. A compliment that feels slightly calculated, silence that feels like punishment, a subtle guilt trip disguised as concern. These are not accidents. These are dark psychology tactics designed to influence your emotions without triggering your defenses. And the most terrifying part, you think you're choosing freely. Have you ever wondered why certain words hit you harder than others? That's not random, that's psychology. Human beings are wired to respond to tone, authority, scarcity, and validation. Manipulators understand this deeply. They study emotional patterns the way a chess player studies the board. They use manipulation tactics like gaslighting, mirroring, strategic silence, and emotional withdrawal to create imbalance. Once imbalance is created, control becomes easy. This is the hidden science of psychology. When someone controls your emotions, they control your decisions. Why do intelligent people still fall for manipulation? Because dark psychology doesn't attack intelligence, it attacks emotion. Even the smartest minds have emotional triggers: fear of rejection, desire for approval, need for belonging. Manipulators don't overpower you. They make you doubt yourself. They make you question your memory, your reactions, your worth. And when self-doubt enters, control follows. This is why dark psychology tactics are so powerful. They exploit human vulnerability, not weakness. What if manipulation isn't evil, but philosophical? Here's where philosophy enters the conversation. Throughout history, thinkers have debated power, control, and human nature. Some philosophies argue that influence is survival, that dominance ensures security, that control prevents chaos. In this sense, manipulation tactics are not new, they are ancient. The philosophy of power suggests that those who understand human psychology rule those who don't. This idea is uncomfortable, but it explains why dark psychology continues to thrive. It aligns with human ambition. Have you noticed how silence can feel louder than words? Strategic silence is one of the most underestimated manipulation tactics. When someone ignores you intentionally, your brain seeks closure. You replay conversations. You overthink. You chase validation. This is psychological conditioning in action. Dark psychology teaches that removing attention creates emotional dependency. The human mind hates uncertainty, and manipulators weaponize that discomfort. So why don't you see it happening? Because dark psychology blends with normal behavior. It looks like confidence. It sounds like advice. It feels like attraction. Manipulation tactics are subtle, layered, and emotionally intelligent. They mirror your personality, build trust, then shift control slowly. By the time you sense something is wrong, emotional attachment has already formed, and breaking free feels painful. Are you reacting, or are you being programmed to react? That's the final question. Psychology reveals that most human behavior is emotional before it is logical. When someone triggers your fear, pride, jealousy, or desire, they are steering your behavior. Dark psychology doesn't force you. It guides you, quietly, strategically, philosophically. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Have you ever walked away from a simple conversation, feeling smaller than before? That's not an accident. That's dark psychology in motion. The most dangerous dark psychology tactics are not dramatic or obvious. They happen in everyday conversations. A friend who jokes about your insecurities. A colleague who subtly questions your competence in front of others. A partner who twists your words and makes you apologize for things you didn't do. These aren't random behaviors. These are calculated manipulation tactics rooted deeply in human psychology. Have you noticed how some people always make you defend yourself? That's called gaslighting, one of the most powerful dark psychology tactics. They deny what happened. They rewrite events. They make you question your memory. Slowly, your confidence erodes. This isn't about winning an argument. It's about controlling perception. In psychology, perception is reality. When someone controls your perception, they control your emotional state. And when they control your emotions, they control you. Why do certain people mirror your personality perfectly at first? Because mirroring builds instant trust. It's a classic manipulation tactic. They copy your tone, your interests, your values. You feel understood, connected, safe. But this isn't coincidence, it's strategy. Dark psychology teaches that familiarity lowers defenses. When you believe someone is just like you, your guard drops. And once your guard drops, influence becomes effortless. Have you felt the power of strategic silence? Silence is not always peace. Sometimes it's punishment. One of the most subtle dark psychology tactics is emotional withdrawal. They suddenly become distant, cold, unavailable. Your brain goes into panic mode. You replay everything. You seek approval. You try harder. This is psychological conditioning. The philosophy behind this tactic is simple. Humans crave connection. Remove connection, and you create emotional dependence. Why does praise sometimes feel like a trap? Because flattery can be manipulation disguised as admiration. Compliments lower suspicion. They create emotional highs. But in dark psychology, praise is often used to establish leverage. Once someone elevates you emotionally, they can withdraw that validation, and you'll chase it. This cycle of reward and withdrawal is deeply rooted in psychology. It's the same mechanism behind addiction. Have you ever felt pressured to decide quickly? Urgency is a manipulation tactic that attacks logic. Decide now. This opportunity won't last. When urgency is introduced, your rational thinking shuts down. Fear replaces clarity. In psychology, fear narrows perception, and dark psychology tactics rely on narrowing your perception so you can't see alternatives. You react instead of reflect. Why do these everyday tactics work so effortlessly? Because they align with human nature. The philosophy of influence suggests that humans are emotional before they are logical. We seek validation. We avoid rejection. We fear loss. Manipulators understand this better than we understand ourselves. They don't overpower you. They guide your emotions step by step, conversation by conversation. And the scariest part, these manipulation tactics don't look like control. They look like normal interaction, like concern, like humor, like love. But this is only the surface. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to always get what they want from others? It's not luck. It's dark psychology at work. The most dangerous manipulation tactics don't rely on brute force or intimidation. They rely on subtle influence, exploiting your emotions and instincts. These tactics are designed to make you act without realizing it, to bend your behavior to someone else's will while making you believe it's your own choice. Every time you feel controlled in a relationship, a workplace, or even a friendship, these tactics are in play. Why do certain phrases make your chest tighten or your mind race? This is the genius of psychology in manipulation. Words are tools. Manipulators use specific language patterns, emotional triggers, and timing to influence your thoughts. A compliment delivered strategically can make you feel indebted. A question framed just right can make you doubt your own judgment. These are not coincidences. They are dark psychology tactics designed to provoke specific emotional responses, shaping your decisions before you consciously react. Have you noticed how some people can make you feel guilty for things you didn't do? This is called emotional manipulation, one of the most insidious manipulation tactics. It leverages your natural empathy and moral compass against you. You replay situations in your head, overthink, and ultimately adjust your behavior to appease the manipulator. They create an emotional loop where your mind becomes predictable. This is the hidden science of dark psychology, turning empathy and human kindness into levers of control. Why does fear seem to cloud your judgment when someone pressures you? Because fear is one of the most powerful triggers in psychology. When manipulated correctly, fear overrides logic, narrows attention, and increases suggestibility. A manipulator doesn't need to scream or threaten. A subtle implication, a whispered warning, or a look of disapproval is enough. These are advanced dark psychology tactics that exploit your instincts to maintain control over your behavior without confrontation. Have you ever felt emotionally exhausted after a conversation that seemed ordinary at first? That's called covert influence. It's a tactic used by skilled manipulators to drain your mental energy and make you more compliant. Through subtle questioning, strategic silence, or shifting blame, they ensure you second-guess yourself constantly. Your mind is tired, your emotions are heightened, and decision-making becomes easier for them to influence. This is manipulation tactic psychology applied at its most effective level. Why do some manipulative behaviors feel impossible to resist? Because they target the core of human motivation. Desire for approval, fear of rejection, and need for connection are universal. Dark psychology exploits these desires, and when paired with refined tactics, it creates control without visible force. Philosophically, it raises uncomfortable truths about human behavior. Influence and dominance are always present, whether we recognize them or not. Dark psychology tactics are simply tools for those who understand these truths. Have you ever questioned if people's intentions are genuine? That's the effect of manipulation. A skilled manipulator blurs lines between authenticity and strategy. You trust them, you doubt yourself, and they remain in control. These tactics are layered, subtle, and psychologically interactive. Every human emotion you feel can be leveraged. Every decision you make can be guided, and most importantly, you won't even see it happening until it's too late. The surface has been scratched. The control is subtle. The influence is real. Have you ever asked yourself why some people always seem to dominate every situation? It's not luck or talent. It's dark psychology wrapped in the philosophy of power. Manipulation is ancient. It's woven into human history and social structures. From rulers to business leaders, understanding manipulation tactics has always been a key to influence. But the most dangerous part, these tactics are hidden in plain sight, disguised as logic, reason, or even kindness. Humans don't just respond to force, they respond to strategy, subtle emotional cues, and the promise of reward or the fear of loss. Why do humans follow authority even when it feels wrong? This is psychology at its core. Dark psychology tactics exploit our inherent need for structure and safety. Philosophically, people obey because survival historically depended on hierarchies. Fear, respect, or desire for acceptance triggers compliance. Manipulators understand this instinctively. By appealing to your natural psychological drives, they guide your choices without ever appearing controlling. The genius of manipulation is that it feels voluntary, but the decision was never truly yours. Have you noticed how power often silences those who question it? Control is rarely overt. One of the most effective manipulation tactics is shaping perception. When you doubt your perspective, hesitate to act, or question your worth, the manipulator remains invisible but omnipresent. This isn't just psychology, it's a philosophical principle of influence. Power doesn't need to scream, it quietly alters reality in ways that make you compliant and predictable. The moment you feel small, emotional, or insecure, their influence grows stronger. Why do some people always get emotional reactions from others without even trying? That's the subtle art of emotional manipulation. Skilled manipulators exploit triggers like guilt, desire, pride, and fear. They provoke responses that seem natural, but are guided by dark psychology tactics. Every reaction you give can be mapped, predicted, and leveraged. This is the essence of manipulation philosophy. Influence through calculated emotional engagement rather than coercion. Your mind is the battlefield, your emotions are the weapons they wield. Have you wondered why humans rarely act purely rationally? Because emotion governs decisions far more than logic. Psychology shows that fear, desire, and attachment override reason consistently. Manipulation tactics exploit this weakness, making rational objections nearly impossible. Philosophically, this is why power often wins over morality. Those who understand emotional levers hold control. Those who rely solely on ethics are vulnerable. Dark psychology reveals the uncomfortable truth. Understanding human emotion is power. Why does manipulation feel invisible until it's too late? Because manipulators integrate dark psychology tactics seamlessly into everyday interactions. They mix authority, empathy, fear, and reward to steer behavior. Philosophically, this mirrors human survival strategies, the ones who influence perception, control outcomes. You don't feel forced, you feel persuaded. You don't feel trapped, you feel convinced. Yet every subtle move was designed with intent, every word calculated to provoke, every silence measured to create dependence. Have you realized how easily influence shapes your worldview? From personal relationships to professional hierarchies, the philosophy behind manipulation demonstrates that understanding human psychology is mastery. By combining emotional intelligence with calculated strategy, manipulators bend human behavior to their will. Dark psychology isn't just theory, it's applied human behavior. And until you recognize these tactics, your mind remains an open field for subtle, psychological conquest. The hidden layers are visible. The emotional levers are active. The subtle control is everywhere. Have you ever felt powerless after someone subtly manipulated you? That feeling of helplessness is the signature effect of dark psychology tactics. For years, manipulators have used psychology and dark psychology to exploit human emotions, bending your behavior without you noticing. But the truth is, understanding these tactics is the first step to breaking free. Every subtle guilt trip, every strategic silence, every carefully crafted compliment, once you recognize it, it loses its power. Awareness is the ultimate defense. Why does it feel impossible to spot manipulation at first? Because the human mind is wired for trust. Evolution designed us to seek connection, empathy, and cooperation. Manipulation tactics exploit these instincts. They work quietly, hiding inside normal interactions. That friend who mirrors your behavior, the colleague who pressures you subtly, the partner who twists your words, they all rely on your natural responses. But once you learn the science of dark psychology, you start to see patterns instead of being blindsided by emotion. Have you noticed how emotions can cloud judgment? That's the manipulator's playground. Dark psychology tactics exploit fear, desire, pride, and guilt to shape decisions. When emotion overwhelms logic, control becomes effortless. But here's the secret: awareness doesn't just help you recognize manipulation. It trains your mind to pause, question, and act intentionally. Understanding psychology transforms your emotional reactions from automatic to conscious choices, giving you control over your own decisions. Why do boundaries feel so hard to enforce with manipulators? Because they rely on subtle erosion of limits. Emotional manipulation is designed to bypass logic and exploit attachment. By gradually shifting expectations, creating guilt, or making you feel responsible for their emotions, manipulators gain influence. Dark psychology tactics like these thrive in relationships without clear boundaries. But philosophy teaches that recognizing power dynamics is the first step in reclaiming authority. Setting firm limits disrupts manipulation and restores balance. Have you realized the power of self-reflection against manipulation? Manipulators bank on predictable reactions. They study human psychology, predicting emotional responses to guide behavior. But when you pause, reflect, and analyze your feelings, you break the cycle. Journaling your reactions, questioning the intent behind words, and identifying patterns are practical ways to neutralize dark psychology tactics. The philosophy here is simple. Control over your mind equals freedom from control by others. Why does knowledge of these tactics feel like a superpower? Because once you understand dark psychology, you can see influence attempts before they take hold. Recognizing subtle gaslighting, emotional withdrawal, or mirroring strategies allows you to respond intentionally rather than react. You reclaim autonomy. You turn manipulation into insight, and by combining psychology with practical strategies, you protect not just your emotions, but your decisions and relationships. How can you ensure manipulators lose their grip? By strengthening self-awareness, cultivating emotional intelligence, and setting firm boundaries. Understanding manipulation tactics is just the first step. Applying them consciously is the key. Every time you pause before reacting, question the intent, and make deliberate choices, you disrupt the manipulator's power. Dark psychology loses its effectiveness when your mind becomes your fortress. Finally, the cycle ends when you refuse to be a passive participant. Awareness, reflection, and deliberate action are your ultimate defenses. Mastering these principles ensures that manipulative influence can never control you again.